So, Adam, what exactly do you do for a living? My father's voice sliced through the dinner conversation like a blade through butter. I watched Adam's fork pause halfway to his mouth, and my stomach twisted into knots. We were sitting in the Sterling Room, my father's favorite restaurant where he loved to parade his success. The chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the mahogany panels absorbed every uncomfortable silence. Adam set down his fork carefully, wiping his mouth with the linen napkin. My name is Lily Harper. I'm an engineer, sir. I work in software development for industrial automation systems. Before I tell you how it all started, I have to ask you for a favor. Write in the comment where you're watching me from. Will love to see how far this voice travels, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Your help is very important. What I'm about to share with you is something I never thought could happen to me at home. This is a story about trust betrayal and the kind of evil that hides behind a smile. My father leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine glass with that look I knew too well. The one that said he'd already decided someone wasn't worth his time. Software. I see. And how much does that pay these days? Dad, please, I interjected, but he raised a hand to silence me. I'm just curious, Lily. You're a young man here, this broke tech boy, he seems like a nice enough fellow. But let's be realistic about the future. The word broke hung in the air like smoke. Adam's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. I make enough to support myself, sir. And I have ambitions beyond my current position. My father laughed, the sound cold and dismissive. Ambitions. Everyone has those, son. What matters is family, legacy, stability. Things you clearly can't provide. The drive home was suffocating. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Adam sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window at the Chicago skyline passing by in blurred lights. I'm so sorry, I whispered, breaking the silence that had followed us from the restaurant parking lot. He turned to look at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, more determined. Don't apologize for him, Lily. That's not your burden to carry. But it felt like my burden. My father had spent the entire evening picking apart Adam's background, his income, his lack of family connections. He'd made comments about Adam's apartment being quaint and his car being economical. Each word was a calculated insult dressed up as casual observation. He doesn't understand you, I said, my voice cracking slightly. He doesn't see what I see. Adam reached over and squeezed my hand briefly before pulling away. Maybe that's for the best. I wanted to argue, to defend my father somehow, but the words died in my throat. Because deep down, I knew Adam was right. My father, Edward Harper, saw people as either useful connections or worthless obstacles. And he'd clearly categorized Adam as the latter. My phone buzzed at 2 a.m. I grabbed it from my nightstand, squinting at the bright screen in the darkness. Adam's name appeared with a text message. One day, he'll wish he hadn't said that. I stared at those words, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to call him, to talk through what had happened, to promise that we could work through my father's disapproval. But another part of me, the part that had grown up under Edward Harper's iron thumb, knew it wasn't that simple. I typed and deleted 3 different responses. I love you. Too desperate. He'll come around. Too naive. I'm sorry. Too weak. Finally, I set the phone down without responding. The next morning, I woke to find another message. This one was shorter, more final. I need some space to think. Take care of yourself, Lily. That was 3 weeks ago. Adam had disappeared from my life as suddenly as my father had dismissed him. No calls. No texts. His social media went silent. When I drove past his apartment, his car was gone. I kept the unsent I'm sorry in my drafts folder, a reminder of my cowardice. Lily, a moment please. My father's assistant, Caroline, gestured toward his corner office with an apologetic smile. I'd been dreading this conversation. The Riverside project was supposed to be mine. I'd spent 6 months developing the concept, working nights and weekends to perfect the designs. It was a mixed-use development that would revitalize an entire neighborhood, and I'd poured my heart into every detail. My father sat behind his massive desk, flanked by blueprints and architectural models. Across from him sat Derek Vaughan, his favorite protégé. Derek was 35, confident, and everything my father valued, male, from a connected family, and willing to laugh at Edward Harper's jokes. "Lily, I've made a decision about Riverside," my father announced without preamble. "Derek will be taking the lead." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "Dad, that's my project. I've been working on it for months." "And you've done excellent preliminary work," he said, his tone suggesting he was being generous. "But this is a $40 million project. It needs experienced leadership. Derek has successfully managed 3 projects of this scale." "Because you gave them to him," I shot back, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. "I've never gotten that opportunity." Derek shifted uncomfortably, but he didn't speak up. Of course he didn't. I found myself on the firm's rooftop terrace, a space usually reserved for client entertainment but empty now in the late afternoon. The Chicago wind whipped my hair around my face as I stared out at the skyline. One tear fell. Just one. I wouldn't give my father the satisfaction of more than that. "He's wrong," I whispered to the city spread out before me. "He's wrong about both of us." I thought about Adam's quiet confidence, the way he'd explained his work with genuine passion despite my father's condescension. I thought about the small software company he'd mentioned starting on the side, the patents he was filing, the vision he had for automation technology. My father had looked at Adam and seen only present circumstances. He'd seen a 29-year-old engineer with a modest apartment and a 5-year-old car. He hadn't seen the brilliant mind, the work ethic, the hunger to build something meaningful. Just like he looked at me and saw only a daughter, not an architect with genuine talent and vision. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father had built Harper Stone architecture on the principle of seeing potential in overlooked spaces. He'd made his fortune transforming forgotten neighborhoods into thriving communities. Yet he couldn't see potential in people standing right in front of him. The staff meeting droned on as my father presented his latest vision, a massive expansion into 3 new markets simultaneously. 50 new hires. 3 new offices. A marketing budget that made several board members visibly uncomfortable. "This is our moment," Edward Harper declared, his voice booming with confidence. "Harper Stone will dominate the Midwest architectural market within 2 years." I watched Patricia Chen, our chief accountant, exchange a worried glance with Thomas Wu, our operations director. Her eyes held a concern that made my stomach drop. After the meeting, I caught Patricia in the hallway. "Is everything okay with the expansion plans?" She hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Your father is very ambitious, Lily. Sometimes ambition can outpace resources." "What does that mean?" "It means," she said quietly, glancing around to make sure we were alone, "that ambition costs money. A lot of money. And not all of it is money we currently have." She walked away before I could press further, leaving me standing in the corridor with a growing sense of unease. That night, I lay awake thinking about Patricia's words, about Derek taking my project, about Adam's final text message. Everything felt like it was shifting beneath my feet, and I had no idea how to find solid ground. I stayed late at the office, something I'd been doing more frequently since losing the Riverside project. The building was quiet, most employees long gone. I told myself I was working on new proposals, but really, I was hiding from my empty apartment and my racing thoughts. While organizing files for Derek's team, I found a folder of invoices that didn't make sense. Payments to contractors I didn't recognize. Deposits to accounts I'd never seen in our books. The amounts were substantial, 6 figures flowing out to entities with vague names like Metropolitan Development Services and Coastal Property Consulting. I grabbed my phone and texted Patricia, can we talk tomorrow about some accounting questions? Her response came quickly, my office. 8 a.m. Come alone. The next morning, Patricia closed her office door and pulled the blinds before speaking. What did you find? I showed her the invoices. She looked at them and sighed deeply. Your father's expansion isn't funded by our profits, Lily. He's been taking out lines of credit, leveraging our existing properties, and making investments in ventures that haven't yet returned anything. How bad is it? She met my eyes. We have maybe 6 months of runway if everything goes perfectly. If we lose even one major client or if one of his investments fails. She didn't finish the sentence. The meeting at First Chicago Bank felt like a funeral. I sat next to my father in a sterile conference room while a banker named Mr. Peterson reviewed our credit situation with clinical detachment. Mr. Harper, your firm has extended its line of credit to capacity. We cannot approve additional funding at this time. My father's face reddened. Do you know who I am? Harper Stone has been banking with you for 25 years. Which is why we're having this conversation rather than simply declining, Peterson replied calmly. Your expansion has been aggressive, and the market conditions don't support the growth projections you provided. After the meeting, I tried to talk to my father as we walked to his car. Dad, maybe we should reconsider the timeline for expansion. If we're stretched thin financially. We're not stretched thin, he snapped. That banker doesn't understand vision. This is temporary. The Riverside project alone will bring in enough to cover everything. But I designed Riverside to be more modest, more sustainable. The way Derek's scaling it up, the costs are. Enough, Lily. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Leave business to men who understand numbers. You focus on making pretty drawings. The dismissal stung worse than any of his previous comments. I was a licensed architect with a master's degree from Columbia. I understood numbers perfectly well. I requested a meeting with my father, armed with spreadsheets and projections Patricia had helped me compile. If I could just show him the reality of our financial situation, maybe he'd listen. Dad, we need to scale back. The expansion is going to sink us. Look at these numbers. He barely glanced at my carefully prepared documents. These numbers are overly conservative. You're being fearful instead of bold. I'm being realistic. We're overextended. If even one project falls through. His fist slammed on the desk, making me jump. Don't you ever question me in my own company. I built this firm from nothing while you were still in diapers. I know what I'm doing. But the bank will come around when they see our success. Now get out. I have real work to do. I left his office shaking, clutching my rejected spreadsheets. In the hallway, I passed Derek, who gave me a sympathetic look that felt more like pity. Later, I found Patricia in the break room. He won't listen. I know, she said softly. I've tried too. He's convinced that confidence alone can solve structural problems. What happens when he's proven wrong? Patricia stirred her coffee slowly. Then we all pay the price. The office began to feel like a sinking ship. Over the next month, 3 senior architects resigned. 2 more were clearly looking for exits, updating their portfolios and taking mysterious long lunches. The receptionist quit without giving notice. The phones rang less frequently. Client meetings that should have been scheduled months in advance simply weren't happening. I found myself taking on double the workload, covering for departed employees while also trying to keep my own projects moving forward. My father seemed oblivious to the exodus, or perhaps he simply refused to acknowledge it. Weak people leave, he declared in a staff meeting. We're better off without them. But we weren't better off. We were drowning. I started coming in at 6 in the morning and leaving at 10 at night. The dark circles under my eyes became permanent. I stopped returning calls from friends. My apartment became just a place to shower and sleep a few hours before returning to the office. One night, I fell asleep at my desk and woke up to find the janitor gently shaking my shoulder. "Miss Harper, you should go home." I looked at him and realized I'd forgotten what home felt like. The rumors started quietly, whispered in corners and discussed in hushed tones at industry events. Harper Stone was in trouble. Big trouble. I overheard a conversation in the bathroom at a professional conference. Two women I didn't recognize were touching up their makeup while talking. I heard they're bleeding clients. The Riverside project is way over budget, and they've lost 3 major contracts this quarter. Wasn't Harper supposed to be the next big thing? Edward Harper was on the cover of Architecture Midwest just 2 years ago. Pride comes before the fall, I guess. They left before I emerged from the stall, but their words echoed in my mind. Back at the office, my father's temper grew increasingly volatile. When a potential client mentioned they'd heard concerning things about our firm's stability, he threw a chair across the conference room after they left. "Who's spreading lies about us?" he roared. I wanted to tell him that they weren't lies. That our reality was catching up with his fiction. But I knew he wouldn't hear it. Instead, I quietly started updating my own resume and portfolio. Just in case. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. Bellman Industries, our largest client, wanted a meeting. They represented 30% of our annual revenue, and they'd been with us for 8 years. I sat in the conference room next to my father and Derek as Mr. Bellman delivered the news with regret in his voice. "Edward, we've valued our partnership, but we've decided to move in a different direction. We're canceling the Northbrook project effective immediately." That was a $12 million project. I watched my father's face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally a terrifying calm. "May I ask why?" "We've heard concerns about your firm's financial stability. We can't risk our investment in a partner who might not be able to complete the work." After they left, my father turned to me with wild eyes. "This is your fault." "What? How is this my fault?" "You're the bad luck. Ever since you started questioning every decision, pushing your negativity, things have fallen apart. Maybe if you spent more time working and less time doubting." I stood up, my hands shaking. I gathered my notepad and pen and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" "Home," I said quietly. "To pack up my things." I didn't quit that day. But I started to seriously consider what life might look like outside Harper Stone architecture. 2 weeks later, Patricia knocked on my office door with an expression I couldn't read. "Lily, we've received an unusual inquiry. A private investor wants a meeting about potential investment in the firm. They specifically asked for you to be present." My heart skipped. Me? Not my father? They said, and I quote, "I'd like Miss Harper to be part of any discussions about the firm's future." Does that mean something to you? I shook my head, but my mind was racing. Who would request me specifically? Most investors would want to meet with the founder and CEO, not his daughter. When's the meeting? Thursday. 10 a.m. They're sending representatives to our offices. I spent the next 2 days in a fog of speculation. Was this a legitimate opportunity or some elaborate scheme? Could we even be saved at this point? Our debts were mounting, and the loss of Bellman Industries had created a cascade effect. 2 smaller clients had also backed out, citing concerns about our stability. Thursday morning arrived with unseasonable rain. I dressed carefully in my best suit, applied makeup to hide the exhaustion, and arrived at the office an hour early. Patricia met me outside the conference room. "They're here." The conference room door opened, and my breath caught in my throat. Adam stood there, but not the Adam I remembered. This version wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His hair was professionally styled. He carried a leather portfolio that screamed money and success. Behind him were 2 others, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a younger man carrying a laptop. My father's face drained of all color. He actually took a step backward. Good morning, Adam said, his voice steady and professional. He extended his hand to my father. Good to see you again, sir. The word sir carried no warmth, no deference. It was simply a word, empty of meaning. My father's handshake was weak, uncertain. Adam. This is unexpected. I'm sure it is. Adam turned to me, and for just a moment, I saw warmth flicker in his eyes. Lily. You look well. Thank you. My voice came out barely above a whisper. The woman stepped forward. I'm Victoria Cross, legal counsel for Cole Investment Group. This is Nathan Flores, our financial analyst. Shall we sit? We arranged ourselves around the conference table. My father kept glancing at Adam like he was trying to solve an impossible puzzle. Adam opened his portfolio and extracted several documents. Mr. Harper, I'm here today representing Cole Investment Group. We've been monitoring Harper Stone's situation for several weeks, and we believe there's an opportunity for strategic partnership. Partnership, my father repeated slowly. We're prepared to offer a substantial capital investment that would stabilize your firm's immediate financial challenges and fund sustainable growth moving forward. Victoria slid a document across the table. The number at the top made my eyes widen. $20 million. My father's hands trembled slightly as he picked up the paper. This is generous. What are the terms? Full financial transparency. Quarterly audits. And most importantly, restructuring of leadership and decision-making processes. What kind of restructuring? Nathan spoke up for the first time. Our analysis shows that Harper Stone's challenges stem from overextension and concentration of authority. We would require the establishment of an executive board with distributed decision-making power. My father's jaw tightened. This is my company. It was your company, Adam said calmly. Right now, it's a company drowning in debt with approximately 4 months before insolvency. We're offering a lifeline. The question is whether you're willing to grab it. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Victoria spoke again. We're also requiring specific representation in leadership positions, including the promotion of qualified internal candidates who've been overlooked. Her eyes flickered to me for just a moment. I need to speak with Lily. Privately. Adam's words weren't a request. My father started to object, but Victoria cut him off smoothly. Mr. Harper, perhaps you could review the contract terms with Nathan while Mr. Cole and Miss Harper discuss the operational aspects? Before my father could refuse, I stood. That's fine. We can use my office. I led Adam down the hall, hyper-aware of his presence behind me. We entered my small office, barely a quarter the size of my father's, and I closed the door. Adam, what is this really about? He walked to my window, looking out at the city. Do you remember what I told you 3 years ago? About the automation patents I was filing? Yes. They went through. All 7 of them. I licensed them to a manufacturing consortium for $32 million. He turned to face me. Then I used that money to start Cole Investment Group. We specialize in rescuing struggling companies with strong fundamentals but poor management. I sank into my chair. You became exactly what my father said you'd never be. No. His voice was firm. I became exactly what I always was. Your father just couldn't see it. Then why are you here? For revenge? I'm here because you deserve better than watching your father destroy everything you've worked for. He moved closer. I'm not here to embarrass him, Lily. I'm here because you deserve to run this place. And I'm going to make sure you get that chance. We returned to the conference room where my father was pale and shaking. Nathan had clearly walked him through the financial reality in stark terms. Victoria laid out the contract point by point. Cole Investment Group would acquire 51% ownership. Edward Harper would maintain a role as founder and senior advisor but would no longer have unilateral decision-making authority. An executive board would be established, with seats for Adam, Victoria, my father, and 2 internal promotions. The internal promotions, Victoria continued, will be Patricia Chen as Chief Financial Officer and Lily Harper as Chief Creative Director. My father's head snapped up. Chief Creative Director? That's Derek's title. Mr. Vaughn will be offered a generous severance package, Adam said. Our analysis shows that Miss Harper's designs have consistently outperformed his in both innovation and client satisfaction. She should have been leading the Riverside project from the beginning. I felt something crack inside my chest. Not breaking, opening. My father looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time in years. Lily, you don't want this. Tell them you don't want this. I met his eyes steadily. Sign the contract, Dad. His face crumpled. But Victoria was already placing a pen in his hand. The signing took 20 minutes. My father's hand shook as he wrote his name on page after page. With each signature, I watched his empire become something else entirely. When it was finished, Victoria collected the documents and stood. Mr. Harper, we'll be scheduling a company-wide announcement for Monday morning. I trust you'll be professional and supportive during that transition. My father said nothing. Adam shook his hand one final time. We're not here to destroy what you built, sir. We're here to save it. I hope you'll come to see that. After they left, my father remained seated at the conference table. I started to leave, but his voice stopped me. Did you know? Did you know he'd become this? I turned back. No. But I knew he was capable of it. You were just too blind to see. He was a broke nobody. He was never broke, Dad. And he was never a nobody. He just wasn't what you wanted him to be. I left him sitting there alone in the conference room, surrounded by the ghosts of his certainty. Monday morning arrived with the weight of revolution. Adam's team had worked through the weekend, conducting a comprehensive audit of every aspect of Harper & Stone's operations. I arrived at 7 to find the conference room already full of laptops and documents. Nathan was there with 2 forensic accountants, and they all wore grave expressions. Lily, you should see this, Nathan said, sliding a report across to me. What I read made my blood run cold. My father hadn't just overextended the firm's credit. He'd hidden debts in subsidiary companies. He'd personally guaranteed loans using company assets as collateral without board approval. He'd shifted money between accounts to hide shortfalls from auditors. Is this legal? I asked. Barely, one of the accountants replied. But it's certainly unethical. And if any of these creditors had called in their loans simultaneously, the firm would have collapsed overnight. Victoria arrived with a lawyer I didn't recognize. We need to have a conversation with Edward Harper. Immediately. They summoned my father to the office at 8:30. I wasn't present for that meeting, but I heard the shouting through the walls. My father's voice, raised in defense and denial. Adam's voice, calm and implacable. When my father emerged an hour later, he looked like he'd aged 10 years. The all-hands meeting at 10 was tense. Every employee gathered in our largest conference room, whispers rippling through the crowd as Adam took the podium. Good morning. For those who don't know me, I'm Adam Cole, representing Cole Investment Group. As of Friday, we became the majority stakeholder in Harper & Stone architecture. The whispers grew louder. This isn't a takeover. It's a rescue. This firm has incredible talent and a strong portfolio. But it's been mismanaged to the point of near collapse. That ends today. He outlined the changes: new financial oversight, restructured leadership, emphasis on sustainable growth rather than reckless expansion. My father stood in the back of the room, his arms crossed, his face a mask of barely controlled rage. Then Adam announced the new executive board. When he named me as Chief Creative Director, applause broke out. Real applause, from colleagues who'd watched me get passed over time and again. One more thing, Adam added. Edward Harper will remain with the firm as founder and senior advisor. However, all major decisions will now require board approval. This includes project assignments, hiring, and financial commitments over $50,000. My father pushed through the crowd and left the room. The door slammed behind him with finality. The story hit the industry press by Tuesday afternoon. Cole Investment Group acquires Harper Stone in stunning corporate rescue. My phone exploded with calls, texts, and emails. Former colleagues reached out to congratulate me. Clients who'd left began inquiring about returning. Reporters wanted interviews. The articles all told the same story. A self-made tech investor had swooped in to save a drowning architecture firm, promoting the founder's overlooked daughter to leadership in the process. Some publications framed it as a feel-good story of redemption. Others focused on the dramatic fall of Edward Harper's empire. The one that hurt most was the piece that called my father a cautionary tale of ego overriding judgment. He stopped coming to the office after that article published. Patricia handled forwarding urgent documents to his home, but he refused to respond to most communications. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and let myself cry. Not for the loss of my father's respect, I wasn't sure I'd ever truly had that. But for the loss of the fantasy that someday I might earn it. My first week as chief creative director was a crash course in authority. Projects that had been stalled for months suddenly needed immediate decisions. Clients wanted to meet the new leadership. The staff looked to me for direction in ways they never had before. I called a meeting of all the architects and designers. 23 people crowded into the conference room, including several who'd tried to leave but were now reconsidering. I know things have been chaotic, I began. But I want to make something clear. Under my leadership, we're going back to what made this firm great, innovative design that serves communities, not ego projects that serve shareholders. I pulled up the original Riverside project on the screen. My design. The one Derek had inflated beyond recognition. We're scaling this back to the original scope. Sustainable, community-focused, profitable. That's our new standard. Someone in the back raised their hand. What about Derek? Derek has accepted a severance package and is pursuing other opportunities. His projects will be reassigned to the people who should have had them from the start. The mood in the room shifted. People sat up straighter. Shoulders that had been hunched with stress began to relax. After the meeting, Patricia pulled me aside. You're a natural at this. I'm terrified. Good, she smiled. That means you respect the responsibility. My father requested a meeting 2 weeks after the board restructuring. We met at a neutral location, a small coffee shop far from the office. He looked smaller somehow. The confidence that had always surrounded him like armor was gone, leaving just an aging man who'd lost control of his legacy. I need your help, he said without preamble. With what? The board is reviewing all of my past projects. They're questioning decisions I made years ago. I need you to defend me. I stirred my coffee slowly. Were those decisions defensible? They were my decisions. I built that firm. I should be able to run it as I see fit. You almost destroyed it, Dad. You know that, right? Another 3 months and we would have been bankrupt. Employees would have lost their jobs. Clients would have lost their deposits. All because you were too proud to admit you were wrong. His jaw clenched. I made mistakes. But I don't deserve to be humiliated by some upstart who got lucky with a few patents. Adam didn't get lucky. He worked harder than anyone I've ever known. And he saw potential where you only saw someone to mock. My father's eyes glistened. He's doing this to punish me. No, I said firmly. He's doing this to save the firm. And to give me the opportunity you never would have. If you can't see the difference, then you've learned nothing from any of this. I stood to leave, then turned back. I did try to help you, Dad. Multiple times. You never listened. That's not on me. 3 months later, Harper and Stone held a grand reopening celebration. We'd moved to new offices, smaller but more efficient. The space was modern and bright, filled with the energy of a team that actually believed in what they were building. I'd personally redesigned the layout to emphasize collaboration over hierarchy. No more corner offices. Even I worked in an open space alongside my team. Adam stood beside me as guests arrived, clients, partners, industry leaders who'd heard about our transformation. I caught him watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "You're proud of this," he observed quietly. "I am. We've turned 5 projects around, brought back 3 major clients, and we're operating in the black for the first time in 18 months. That's not what I meant." He gestured at the room full of people. "You're proud of the leader you've become." Before I could respond, Patricia clinked her glass, calling for attention. She gestured for me to come forward. I made my way to the front of the room, my heart pounding. "Leadership," I began, and my voice was steady, "isn't about ego. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room or making unilateral decisions. Leadership is about vision, yes. But it's also about listening. About recognizing talent in others. About building something larger than yourself." I looked at the faces around me, colleagues who'd stuck with us through chaos, clients who'd given us a second chance, and Adam, who'd seen something in me worth saving. Harper and Stone nearly died because one person forgot those principles. Today, we're thriving because we remembered them. The applause was genuine, warm. After the celebration ended and the guests filtered out, I found myself on the rooftop terrace of our new building. The Chicago skyline glowed against the darkening sky, 1,000 lights promising 1,000 possibilities. I heard footsteps behind me and knew without turning that it was Adam. "You avoiding the party?" he asked, joining me at the railing. "Just taking a moment." I smiled. "It's been quite a year." "That's an understatement." He pulled out 2 glasses and a bottle of champagne from behind his back. "I thought we might need this." As he poured, I found myself thinking about that dinner a lifetime ago. My father's cruel words. Adam's quiet exit. The way I'd let it all fall apart without fighting. "My father called you a broke nobody," I said softly. Adam handed me a glass, his lips quirking into a slight smile. "I remember. Now you're signing my paychecks and you saved our family name. Technically, you're earning those paychecks. I'm just making sure you get the opportunities you deserve." I clinked my glass against his, the crystal singing in the evening air. "Turns out worth isn't inherited. It's earned." "Some people learn that lesson early," he said, looking out at the city. "Others never learn it at all." We stood in comfortable silence, sipping champagne as the city lights flickered like stars brought down to earth. Somewhere in this city, my father was probably sitting in the dark, nursing his wounded pride. But I couldn't carry that burden anymore. I'd built something new from the ashes of his empire. Something better, stronger, more true. And standing there on that rooftop with Adam beside me, I finally understood what I'd been searching for all along. Not my father's approval. Not revenge against those who dismissed me. Just the simple, revolutionary act of believing in my own worth.